Hey, what's up guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a review on the Creative EMU XM7 bookshelf speakers. Now this is a set of passive bookshelf speakers. If you're not sure about active and passive, what it means is that passive means that you need an amplifier of sorts in order to drive them. So you can't just directly plug them into your computer and be done with it. So just bear that in mind as we're getting into the review. Now let's talk about price. Now on Creative's website they can be found for £230, however there's a much more realistic and much more acceptable price of around £150 on Amazon.co.uk. On Amazon USA they're around $130. They can be found in two separate colours. There's a brown colour and also a black one. The ones you can see in front of you are the brown coloured speakers. Now before some of you get into it, don't worry, there'll be a sound section coming up, a really elongated sound section where I'll be comparing it to what my daily drivers wear with the Celestion 3s. Now in this review I'll be comparing it to them and also referencing some other speakers that you can currently buy in today's market. So now I'd like to quickly talk about the build quality and design and also what you get in the box. Now as you can see the speakers aren't covered, and that's because I took off their speaker grill that comes included. It's a nice little fabric little black speaker grill. I personally remove it because I quite like the look of the speakers as they are, with the speaker actually being exposed. So just bear that in mind. However, if you have pets or little children who like playing around with stuff, then it's probably best to actually just cover it up. Now within the box you've got some speaker cables, which is good, a set of them and a set of manuals. Now in terms of the design of it, I actually really love what they've done over here. Now I got, as I said, the brown version, not the black version, and the brown version looks stunning. Now if you can see in the background I've got my Celestion 3s just currently hooked up. It's all black, and this just makes a big difference. Now obviously it is just due to the color, but just overall in terms of the attention to detail, even the wood varnish that Creative have chosen just looks really nice, and I can see it being used in multiple different settings. Now at the back, as you can see, you've got the left and right for the speaker cable. It's pretty much standard for passive bookshelf speakers. They're gold plated as well, which is always great for longevity, but I can't see people mainly playing around with them. Now before I get into the sound section, I just want to mention their power. So their maximum power is 60 watts. It's marked at the back of the speakers with a little label, and they've got 6 ohms impedance as well. So not very hard to drive as long as you've got an amplifier that can drive it. Now, well, I'm going to move on to the sound quality section, but before doing that, I just want to show you guys that I'm using a Denon AVR X500 receiver that's currently connected via optical to my computer, which is the Asus Z77 Sabertooth motherboard, and then that is then being transmitted into 5 speakers, 2 which are behind us, a subwoofer, a Teufel subwoofer is on the left hand side, and then you've got the 2 speakers over here and the one at the top. So obviously it's going to be doing in a 5.1 surround sound setup using DTS Neo 6M, so that's concentrated towards music. And just in terms of how I've overall tuned it, I've basically tuned each speaker, or each, shall I say, channel, left and right and everything like that, to really get the best out of the speakers. So in this comparison, you'll be hearing the audio for the Creative speakers, and then you'll be hearing the ones for the Celestion 3s, and I'm pretty sure you're going to hear a massive difference, but just make sure you turn up your volume and just listen out for it. So you guys have just come out of the sound demo, and I'd like to thank No Copyright Music, and then links will be down in the description below of all the music I listen to, and you guys can hear them for yourselves if you want to, so shout out for them for making awesome non-copyright music. Now, in the sound demo, you probably were able to hear the difference. Now, if the camera didn't pick it up, I'm really sorry about that. I haven't got no fancy equipment. But if the camera didn't pick it up, I just have to say that the difference between them is pretty much night and day. The biggest difference I found was in terms of the tweeter. The highs are just that little bit more sparkly, provide that nice little extra high-end tones that you'd expect from a nice set of bookshelf speakers. But the biggest thing, apart from the highs and in terms of the overall sound frequency, would actually be this soundstage and the way that these speakers can portray a wide sound. Now, in the music that you heard, hopefully you were able to hear a nice instrument separation coming from left and right, and kind of have like a depth and width to it as well. And that was something that really differentiated the Creative speakers over other bookshelf speakers I've heard in the past. That comes from Ruark, that comes from Audio Engine as well, and obviously the Celestions, which you can see over here, from active to passive speakers. These speakers actually sounded very open. They weren't claustrophobic of any sorts, and they really portrayed sound in a really nice way. Now, the thing for me is, it doesn't only come to music. When I was watching football matches, when I was listening to commentaries, when I was, I don't know, watching some playback of some F1, you could hear the difference. You could hear the crowds in the background. You could hear the applause. You can hear the ball being kicked. You can hear gunfire, let's say if you're playing some games. And that's what really set the Creative speakers apart from the rest of the pack, and especially versus my old Celestion 3 bookshelf speakers. That for me was the killer blow. Apart from the sound frequencies itself, which I'll get into in just a second, I felt the soundstage really carried the speakers to another level of one that basically, as soon as I plugged them in and after having significant amounts of burn-in, felt that these Creative speakers are the ones that I'll be using on a daily basis. I wouldn't be going back to the Celestion 3s. Now, going into terms of the overall, each sound frequency, in terms of the bass, they were quite bassy, but they're not overly bassy. They don't overshadow the mids. The Celestion 3s might have a slight a dip into towards the mids, but the Creatives were a lot more forward sounding in terms of mid-range, but the bass was controlled. It's a nice clean punch into mid-range, into the mid-bass punch, and in the sub-bass you had a nice little extension there, and obviously that is then being passed down to the subwoofer at a certain frequency. That depends on you and your subwoofer in terms of how you are customizing it. But overall, I was quite impressed with the bass response. As I mentioned just before, the mid-range was forward sounding. It wasn't too recessed. It has an element of a slight warm sound. It's not exactly going to be perfect for those who are producing music and want absolutely tone-deaf mids, but for average consumers like myself listening to music, then the mid-range was actually quite impressive. And I touched upon at the beginning of this part that the highs were impressive yet again. Yes, they extend in the high end quite well, and they're not rolled off or sort. They provide a nice sort of extension. So overall, the sound quality of these speakers are, well, they're both obviously very good in terms of what you can see in front of you, the Celestion 3s and the Creatives. But if I had money to spend, and if I did buy the speakers, then I would absolutely buy the Creative sets of speakers, just because their overall sound presentation is incredible, and it's very impressive. Now, I must say they're quite expensive in comparison to some of these speakers you can currently find in the market, such as the ones I mentioned, or even my really cheap, the pair of Celestion 3 speakers you can see behind you are £30. It's a massive difference. Of course, one's used and, 20, 30 years old, and one is, well, relatively new and can be bought brand new right now on Amazon. So it's a completely different sort of scenario, but versus other speakers that I've heard in the past, active speakers and passive speakers, I must say this ranks among some of the best passive bookshelf speakers I've come across. I would definitely suggest them, and they're up there with some of the best best sound presentation that you can get from bookshelf speakers. Now they won't, as I said before, they won't cater to those people who are doing sound production. If you want those, I would aim for the M Audio set of speakers. They're very much more accurate in the mid-range, but in that respect they lack in terms of the overall soundstage, and they lack in terms of the mid-bass and the sub-bass reproduction. These in front of you will provide you a nice overall sound frequency, and will just be really nice to listen to no matter what scenario you're throwing at them. So there we go, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review. If you have, make sure you give it a like. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the speakers, or of what speakers do you currently run on your PC, or if you run speakers at all, if you just purely run on headphones and a headset or whatever it might be. And favorite and share and subscribe. It always helps the channel grow. I do this just for fun. I'm a independent, unbiased, unpaid, unsponsored reviewer. I don't even get any money from YouTube for doing these reviews. I just do them for fun. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review. Hopefully you appreciate the time and effort I put in for you guys. And there we go. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye-bye.